Do you see a lot of similarities between the two, or is Roy kind of started? Has he established himself as his own guy?
Oh, he established himself as his own guy. Probably after he went to his first Final Four in '91 at Kansas. And that's, I think, a sign of good leadership. Coach Williams honors the past and is grateful to Coach Smith for giving him the opportunity to join his staff way back when. Coach Williams has his own personality. He's more fiery, emotional than Coach Smith. Coach Smith kind of internalized it more. Mm-hmm. Coach Williams expresses it more. I think Coach Smith kind of tweaked this system over the years, where Coach Williams kind of sticks with his offense and defense and, dares you to beat him that way. Where Coach, Smith, when he had the three-point line came in, he was one of the early adopters of taking advantage of it with Kenny Smith and Jeff Lebo, taking threes in transition. And then when Stackhouse and Rasheed Wallace were there, Stack 6'5" power forward. So he went 4 out, 1 in, played small ball before small ball was cool. He had the dribble drive offense before the dribble drive offense was cool. So I think Coach Smith's ability to innovate and start trends was really unique. And I think he was so smart that sometimes he needed to do it for his own interest. Where Coach Williams is more of a traditionalist, is running some of the same things Coach Smith ran back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Kansas and Carolina had this weird connection.
Very weird.
Where, of course, Coach Smith went there, coached there, then Coach Williams went there to coach. You got to see both sides as a player for Carolina and then a coach for Kansas. What are the similarities between the two programs? So they're clearly basketball havens. And then, what makes them different?
Yeah. Wow, that's a great question. It was really weird because I remember going out there. I was coaching at Davidson and knew that, I'd love to work for Coach Williams someday. So I went out and worked camp. And he put me up in the Naismith dorm. The Naismith dorm, the same company that built the Naismith Towers, built Granville Towers, which is on Carolina's campus. Mm-hmm. Same building, same smell. Same elevators, it was weird. I walked in and I'm like, this is bizarre. We have Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. They have Mass Ave in Kansas. Same type of place, the bars, the restaurants, the food, weird. Similar size schools, 25,000, I think, undergrad, 20 at Carolina. Not huge state universities. Beautiful campuses. Carmichael to Allen Fieldhouse, very similar old style gyms. And then Carolina obviously built the Dean Smith Center. Kansas will never rebuild the Allen Fieldhouse. The crowds in there were unbelievable. True basketball fans, passionate, that go back a long way. Again, a lot of similarities from Dean Smith to Larry Brown to Roy Williams. So there's a lot. What's different? I think probably just obviously location and the leagues at that point, the Big 8, Big 12. I had some more football with Nebraska and Oklahoma, where the ACC was mainly basketball.
Right.
And the TV exposure probably was a little bit better in the ACC at that time. But other than that, not a whole lot.
Put you on the spot. Better barbecue, Kansas or Carolina barbecue?
Wow. I live in this state now. I go with Kansas barbecue.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I just like I like more of the brisket and the ribs. Mm-hmm. Versus the chopped barbecue, and I also throw in the Texas barbecue. I was in Dallas for 6 years, so I may have just lost some fans with that comment, but I speak the truth.
Well, let's turn to a place that doesn't have great barbecue, or at least I don't think, which is in South Bend, Indiana. Maybe there is a good barbecue joint there.
That's a good question. I got some pasta.
There we go.
Some pasta.
Which we like.
We like
because
pasta.
We're from New York.
Yeah, we like. Yeah,
So,
yeah. Now there's
course.
some good pasta and good pasta.
There we go. There we go. Well, you were on the sidelines there for years, the head coach.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that experience. I mean, you were very successful, especially for Notre Dame standards, in your year there. How exciting of an experience was that for you to be the head honcho of a team that was in the Big East at the time?
That was probably my most fun year coaching, looking back, because being an Irish Catholic kid, I remember my mother, the day of the press conference, I flew my parents out, and we're walking on campus. It was a beautiful day, April 1st. Sun was shining off the Golden Dome. My mother leans into me. She says, if you couldn't be a Catholic priest, being the head coach at Notre Dame is a close second. True story. Okay? And she meant it. By the way, the next day after I put him on the plane, the clouds came over and the temperature dropped about 30 degrees and it was freezing. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? They said, oh, this is lake effect. No one told you about the lake effect? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, Lake Michigan is like 10 miles away as the crow flies. So anyway, I love the guys that we had there. Mm-hmm. Matt Carroll played for the Hornets.
Right.
Was with Matt at the draft show the other night. Mm-hmm. Troy Murphy, who was an All-American at Notre Dame. Jimmy Dillon was our point guard. Harris Swanigan. David Graves, that was the starting lineup. They were great kids. And as a coach, as a leader, you just want to make an impact. And to make a positive impact and be the head coach where you can make the decisions with your staff, and most of those decisions turn out pretty good, is very rewarding, very fulfilling. And Matt Carroll and I were talking about this story the other day. We had exhibition games back then, and we played a team called Marathon Oil, which was an old AAU team, and they lost to Ohio State by like 24 points. They beat us by 24 points, like 2 days later, and the paper said, lackadaisical effort dooms the Irish, something like that. And I'm reading this headline, and as I'm reading it, I'm getting more and more upset. Mm-hmm. I've been called a lot of things in my day, but lackadaisical has never been one of them. So we weren't supposed to have practice that day. So I called the manager and said, tell the players to be in the gym at whatever, 3 o'clock. I don't want any basketballs out there. So we ran them. And ran them, and ran them, and ran them till they got sick and begged out and flopped out, and I was upset. And you remember the Miracle on Ice movie? Mm-hmm. When they was doing the line sprints on the skates? One of my assistants says that reminded him of what we did in this practice. 5 days later, the players hated me, but I hated them too. Okay? 5 days later, we go into Ohio State, who had beaten Marathon Oil by 25 points, the team we lost to by 24. Mm-hmm. They were ranked preseason number 5. They had come off the Final Four. They had some good players. We beat them on a last-second jump shot at Ohio State. I get goosebumps as the hair is raising up my arm right now. So to change the culture, mm-hmm, and make that kind of impact on a program, especially a storied university like Notre Dame, was really, 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 really cool.
Your success at Notre Dame in that 1 year ultimately puts you on the short list for the Carolina job.
Yeah.
When you were at Notre Dame, was it ever in the back of your mind that that would be a possibility?
Mm-mm. I thought that someday Roy Williams would be the head coach, and maybe I'd consider, have a shot at Kansas. So Bill Guthridge retires in like late June, mid-June, which was a weird time, right? Why does somebody retire in June? Mostly they retire like in March, April. And that's a whole nother story, which can be a whole nother podcast. But anyway, so I call Coach Smith. I'm on vacation with my wife and Fred Quarterbaum, his wife. Fred is now an assistant at Kansas. So we're up in Michigan, on Lake Michigan, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, this. So I called Coach Smith. I said, and this is my intent, saying, Coach, when Kansas calls, if Kansas calls, what should I do? That's what I said to him. If Kansas calls. So the assumption is Coach Williams is taking the North Carolina job. I didn't even question the North Carolina job.
Right.
I just wanted his advice. Should I stay at Notre Dame or consider Kansas if they call? I just wanted to get ahead of it. His line to me was, you know how he used to talk, Matthew, you're on the short list here. I'm like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. Like, just, hang up. Like, I didn't even really think that was going to happen at all, right? Mm-hmm. Like a week later, I'm in his office talking to him about being a head coach at North Carolina because Roy Williams turned it down. And he said to me, so, Matthew, what do you think about taking this job? I said, Coach, I gotta talk to my wife. I got. And typical Coach Smith, he said, just last week you told me it was a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah.
True story. True story. Yeah. True story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you go and you get on campus. You take the job, of course. I mean, I imagine for you that was just, life-changing to be able to coach where you had played.
Yeah, it was, the whole timing of it was not good because, again, it was the end. I took the job July 11th, I think was my first day. That's in the middle of recruiting.
Right.
Recruiting started like July 5th or 10th or 9th or something like that. The first couple of days of recruiting, I was out with a Notre Dame shirt. And all of a sudden, I'm going out with the North Carolina shirt. But the biggest impact, and this goes into another episode which we could discuss, talking about, but a whole leadership, which is the reason I've become passionate about leadership, is because of this experience I had at North Carolina. I told the athletic director I was going to bring my own staff with me. And I asked him if it was okay. He said yes. I should have asked Coach Smith if it was okay. Now, Coach Smith said to me in the interview process, it's your job, you run it how you see fit. Mm-hmm. But he didn't mean it. And that's where I had to learn from experience that even somebody I trusted as much as I did Coach Smith, we all have our flaws. And he knew that he had to have me because Roy turned it down. He couldn't hire, Larry Brown. He couldn't hire George Karl. So if he didn't hire me, he had to hire somebody who was not a Carolina former player or coach.
Right.
So he told me kind of what I wanted to hear. So I thought it was okay if I brought my own staff. But it wasn't okay. And that hurt Coach Smith. And he let it be known that it was hurt him. And that really got me off on the wrong foot in the organization with former players and the secretaries and things like that. Because he was quoted in the paper saying that after my press conference that it felt like a funeral because Pat Sullivan, Phil Ford, and Dave Hanners were not retained. I got credited with firing them. I said, how do you fire people you never hired? So looking back, I should have read between the lines with Coach Smith that, yeah, he's saying it's my program, run it. I should say to you, okay, Coach, I'm going to take this job, but I need you to advise me through every decision I make. And I didn't, because I took his word for it. And I took Dick Bedore's word for it. That's where my lack of experience showed up. So